Can in fact a modern day Jaguar last over 200,000 miles? How about a modern day Benz? Back in 1980s, Jaguar wasn't good for more than 100,000 miles. Mercedes has always known to historically last a long time because they were built like Sherman tanks. They have also changed. Mercedes is no longer built like they used to be. Now, while Jaguar is the British school of engineering, and that really becomes more of a matter of flair and loose luxury, whereas Germans come from a place of scalpel sharp precision. The Germans actually predict precisely when their car is going to fail, where the British cars, very much like the Italian cars, just sort of do it at their own time, on their own clock, and they fail when they sort of want to. So let's talk about the Jaguar F-Type, if it can actually outlast the Mercedes. I'm going to share some statistics with you and some reasons why things have changed in recent history with some of the more modern day Jaguars and Benzes. But I also want to share with you guys the quality experience on both Mercedes versus the Jaguar. And then you can too make the decision for yourself whether you think the modern day Jaguars are actually built to last and whether they can actually outlast a modern day Benz. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. Firstly, Mercedes has transitioned. People that got used to Mercedes that would last forever got used to vehicles from several generations ago. Cars that were primarily naturally aspirated. In other words, no turbos, no supercharging, just good old natural breathing, and actually it just made good power, and it was reliable. They were made to run forever. A lot of their diesels were made to run forever as well. In recent years, Mercedes has upped the power game. They now add a lot of turbocharging to some of their big cars like the AMG versions. They'll go and add twin turbo to a V8 or twin turbo to a V12. And even cars like this C300 right here used to be a V6 just a few short years ago, and now they still call it a C300, but now it's actually a turbocharged four-cylinder engine. This car you used to see with a V6, but now they go and stick a 2-liter four-cylinder engine, and it actually makes more power than the outgoing V6, but now it has to do that with a turbocharger that's tucked under the hood. With that turbocharging now comes added complexity, added heat under the engine compartment, which then causes extra melting of parts like this and like this. All this plastic and wiring harnesses are subjected to extreme heat, which years ago they never had that. And that's why a naturally aspirated V6 Mercedes would literally run forever. Their automatic transmissions were pretty robust as well, and generally as long as you did maintenance, oil changes, coolant flushes, that car would literally run for 500,000 plus miles. Such is not the case in modern days. Why? Because turbocharging adds a lot of heat that does start to take a toll. These cars run harder, run stronger, and yeah, they make the same amount of power with less cylinders displacement, meaning they're working twice as hard as the outgoing engines. Now, Jaguar, on the other hand, has done different things throughout the years. And obviously, many of their cars from history were V12s, V8s, 6s. Well, they're still sticking with a lot of that recipe, but now they're also using 2-liter four-cylinder turbocharged engines like Mercedes is doing here. Every car manufacturer is incorporating that 2-liter engine just because mandates, politics, environment all kicks in and enforces a lot of these carbon emissions start to be scrubbed. So a lot of the use of four-cylinder engines is taking place. But that's part of the reason why modern-day Jaguars are becoming obsolete, and it's because they're not complying with modern regulations as well. Right here we have a 5-liter V8 engine, and it's actually got a supercharger pancaked under here, providing a little extra power. This drivetrain is coupled up to an 8-speed ZF automatic transmission, similar to the Mercedes. The difference is this one's outputting 550 horsepower through that gearbox, and this one's outputting 242 horsepower to that gearbox. So which one do you think is overstrained on the transmission side of things? Obviously, the Jaguar is working the transmission a lot harder. But Jaguar actually didn't sit on their laurels. They've gone through many changes. And back in the late 90s into early 2000s, Ford took over the reins of Jaguar. Now, there's twofold. One, Ford isn't the most reliable car brand on the world, but on the other hand, they implemented some changes which made the brand far more reliable than they actually were. For example, well, at that time they stopped using Lucas for suppliers for the electrical elements, for the electrical wiring, and clearly that was a problem at the time because every Jaguar pretty much had some kind of electrical hang-up, whether windows stopped working or sunroof or glitches or gremlins. That was a known issue, and that was a big part of their overall reliability. But now Jaguar is past that. Electrical issue is behind them. Most of those basic core electrical issues are no longer, not like they once were. Jaguar has made some massive strides in overall durability, practicality in using drivetrains are used more widely spread throughout the market. A lot of modern day Jaguars now are produced by Magna Steyr, which is essentially a similar manufacturer that creates a lot of products for Mercedes, BMW. For example, cars like the I-Pace and E-Pace are products coming out of that facility which just make many of their modern day cars much more dependable. In addition to that, now Tata Motors has taken over, and since that has actually occurred, Jaguar now produces cars that are much more in line with the Mercedes and BMWs and Audis in terms of lifespan and longevity of the overall experience. Sure, nowadays a modern day Jag, 80,000 miles is considered relatively high. But so is a modern day Benz. You don't want to buy a 5-year-old Mercedes-Benz with 90,000 miles on it out of warranty. That's just asking for trouble. The same thing goes with BMW, and the same thing applies for Jaguar. Now, referring to the trusted source RepairPal, who actually collects a lot of data on vehicles across the nation of repairs, the problem areas, actually ranks vehicles. For now, they're talking about the overall reliability of your average Jaguar rates at about 2.5 out of 5, where the average reliability of a Benz ranks actually lower at 2 out of 5. Now, the overall, when you put all the weighting with all the different models and makes, Mercedes ranks at 27th from the top overall manufacturer reliability, whereas Jaguar gets 29. So overall, they rank slightly lower, but both of them are better than BMW for overall predicted reliability based on RepairPal. Servicing costs are quite substantial as well. Your average Mercedes, you're going to expect to pay about $900 annually to get that thing serviced. And a Jaguar here like this, you're going to expect to pay at least $1,200 or $1,300 to keep this vehicle on the road. The other thing to consider, once you hit 100,000 miles, either one of these vehicles are going to start to expect some suspension issues. Bushings, ball joints, control arms are going to both be a problem area for any manufactured car. The problem is this car costs a lot more money to retrofit a lot of those parts than a Mercedes, which still is pricey, but it's going to be much more affordable to keep that on the road versus even a Honda, which is basically almost doing it for nothing. Now, both of these cars are going to be very, very expensive to service, and that's part of the reason that they don't last as long, because both of them, particularly the Jag even more so, once a car gets to be that 5-6 years of age, if you don't have that CPO warranty or certified pre-owned warranty, and you're stuck driving this car, and then of course you're stuck paying the big bills, repair and servicing, a lot of people elect either not to drive it, or they just can't afford it and just sell it or chuck it. A lot of these vehicles fall by the wayside, not so much the F-Type because they're special, but many other Jags, the XE, the XF for example, whereas the Mercedes on the other hand isn't quite as expensive to keep on the road. Granted, these also suffer the same fate, and people that can't afford them as a second or third owner often let these cars neglect them, let them go, and deteriorate. Two things to consider. Mercedes is usually a lot more innovative. Now that turbocharging creates heat. That supercharging over there on the Jaguar doesn't create as much heat, and that heat is on top of the engine. A lot of that heat goes out through the pulley. Now it is forced induction, so that is creating extra pressure and stress in the engine. That will take a toll and reduce the lifespan of that engine. But because they're both forced induction, that means pressurized engine, you're going to see deteriorated lifespan just because of that forced induction. I mean, at the end of the day, a well-engineered, well-designed, naturally aspirated engine will always far outweigh and outlast anything that has air pressurized into the cylinders, like these two. Mercedes, very difficult to service for a DIYer. So somebody outside of warranty is going to struggle with this. I mean, you've got an intercooler, turbo, you've got all kinds of lines down there. If you have to change an O2 sensor, it's going to be very challenging to gain access to a lot of these parts. Over on the Jag, it's even worse. With this V8 engine, it's literally shoehorned in this engine compartment, and there's really no access of anything other than these top hose connections and a few odds and sods. But this car is very neatly wrapped and very tightly fit with all kinds of engine and drivetrain parts. Now, I will say one thing that actually hurts Mercedes is the fact that they increase their innovation and their technology. For example, open this up. Now, yes, they have all the latest technology, power heated seats. You also have that infotainment system there, which is a 360 camera. We've got heated steering wheel, the control pad down here, power seats, oversized sunroof that is powered, by the way, through these controls up here, dual climate control, and of course all the latest technology that Mercedes can throw in a car. Jaguar, on the other hand, has very similar. Fold-away mirrors, pop-out door handles. This is a failure point. Pop that out, the window drops. Then we look in here, we also have power seats, power locks, power windows, tilt, telescopic right there, a steering wheel full of controls. We have different drive modes, like dynamic to snowflake. We also have a whole host of different heating controls all buried within one knob, makes it very complex. Similar series of buttons and an infotainment system, which is much simpler. No 360 camera in here, and it's a simpler system than you find in the Mercedes-Benz. One thing I have to say that I noticed is more poorly built on the Mercedes is the cooling system hoses. And I've showed it like this before. This is a BMW hose, but Mercedes uses the same thing. What it is this metal key ring there, and what it does is it locks in this fittings. Those fittings snaps in there and that key ring holds it. With many heat-cool cycles from the coolant flowing through it, this starts to crack, split, and then leak, and you can see coolant dripping around it. This is pretty normal. But you can literally see a lot of those fittings throughout here. There are your radiator hoses, all kinds of other parts. Down here in your expansion tank, you have those same kind of fittings. That's a common area. Coolant fittings that split, leak, and then cost big bucks to fix. The Jag, on the other hand, take a look. Here, as an example, they use more of a Toyota type all-tension clamp right here on the end of a standard rubber hose that's preformed. The same thing goes with your radiator hose down there, top and bottom rad hoses, and all the other cooling hoses actually have this nice, reliable connection point here. This is much nicer, much more reliable than you're going to expect from the Mercedes-Benz connection, same as you find in a BMW. Both these cars are running all-wheel drive. That means predominantly rear-wheel drive, and then also the drive out of the front wheels as auxiliary just to augment the traction. So that's another area of potential failure, although it's quite reliable overall. So is that transmission, the ZF 8-speed auto that we spoke of. So realistically, both cars have their ups and downs. Both are very expensive to maintain, and that's the key limiting factor with how long these cars live. They say Mercedes-Benz typically can last 250,000, maybe 300,000 miles if you're lucky. Jaguar, you're up to 200,000 if you do all the right servicing, but it's a very expensive car to maintain. Now let's focus on the quality experience. I'm going to show you the Mercedes, and then I'm going to show you the Jaguar, and we're also going to do a cold start just for your own reference. Hope you enjoy it. So the Jaguar basically feels a little better bolted together than the Mercedes does. Let's do a cold start on the Mercedes first. Listen to that unit purr. And now let's do a cold start on the Jaguar F-Type R with the V8. Wow, listen to that kitty purr. Now let's hear it under the hood. So the age-old question, can a modern-day Jaguar outlast the Mercedes-Benz? I think in long and short of it, quite easily. They both rank very, very closely in terms of overall repair pal ratings, 2 to 2.5. Overall, on the large scale, they also rate within a couple of points. They're a little bit more expensive to maintain a Jaguar, but at the end of the day, if you stay on top of your maintenance, the F-Type here has easily the same opportunity to outlive the Mercedes on a car that may be slightly more neglected. The Jaguar can literally run the distance. So Mercedes can run 200,000 miles, but the F-Type Jaguar can run 200,000 miles as well. And I hope you enjoyed that conversation right there. Check that video out. More of the similar conversation about how a modern day Mercedes holds up against a modern day Toyota. Hope to see you on the next one. We'll catch you all real soon. See you then. Bye-bye.